All right, so my goal is to talk to you all about just things that are available and how to optimize function. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-care and then individually different components of self-care and how you can be as independent as possible. Ultimately, we want everybody to have the skills to live independently. And then what does that entail? Do you need special devices? Do you need something that maybe just makes things easier? Or are there ways to adapt what you're already doing? Okay. How do I advance it? Just spacebar?
The right arrow.
Oh, no, that worked too. Okay. All right. So the role of occupational therapists, I don't know how many of you actually see an occupational therapist. I discovered there's a lot of families here who have been coming to clinic who I don't know yet. So hopefully I get to know you. But basically, I try to help people carry on an independent life or to figure out how you can use your arms or your body in order to access your environment. For those with SMA, it's all about adapting activities of daily living, promoting upper extremity function, and encouraging independence again. So generally, upper limbs, we want to see how strong a person is and if there's anything limiting your strength or range of motion. So specifically, anti-gravity movement seems to be the hardest, and what does that limit you to be able to do? So reaching up above your head, you're going to have to use that to get dressed, to comb your hair, to wash your hair, and then how do we either increase the strength or enable the reach to get up there? When we look at the range of motion, a lot of children have hyperlaxity. Does that impact your grasp, your strength? Or is it the opposite where you have a lot of contractures? So ulnar deviation is a fancy word for hands that turn out to the side. A lot of people who spend time in their wheelchairs, that's how you access your environment. Your hands are at your lap level. So you bring them out this way so you can write and type and manipulate things. But then how do we make sure that your hands don't get a contracture? Basically what that is like a permanent shortening of a muscle. So do you need bracing to sleep in? Or is there a contracture coming this way where you have wrist flexion and then you're having a hard time bringing your fingers up? So there's also splints we can make either custom or off the shelf that you can wear while you sleep to promote that range of motion. When you sleep, you tend to curl up your hands or hug a blanket or a teddy bear if you're a child. So is there a way to promote and keep that range of motion while you sleep, either by alternating hands, or with teenagers it's a problem because they all like to play on their cell phones when they're in bed. So how do you do one hand at a time, or how do you keep them being able to play on your phone? Okay. All right, so this is where it gets fun. Play. Play is a very important part of development. This is how kids advance their cognitive skills, their physical skills. It's how they learn how to play with others. Is it through imaginary play? So all of those skills come when you're very young. So when you think about the child with SMA, at least traditionally, type 1's never being able to sit up. Well, if you can't sit up, then you're not reaching for toys. You're not banging blocks together. You're not trying to sack things. You're never feeding your baby. Maybe if you are a sitter, you're not stable enough to be able to reach out and grab things. You need your hands to hold yourself still. So what sorts of things can we do to play to enable them to gain all the cognitive skills? Because a lot of the kids we see are super smart by all the little chatterboxes running around, you could tell that, but how do we keep the cognitive skills growing in the right direction? So sometimes we need to adapt play. Some key points here are that with all the medical things that you've seen, parents sometimes, maybe just unknowingly, you're coordinating all of this medical care, but to take time out of the day and actually play with your child is very, very important. Okay, so let me show you some examples of what you can use for play. So on the right, there's a drum and a dinosaur, and those are both switch toys. So the first one, and there's also the bells. So those are cause and effect toys. So that's like when you first, as a child, start learning that if I shake my rattle, or if I, bang a block on the table, then it makes a noise. So now I've learned cause and effect. If I do something, it promotes something else. So these toys enable the same sort of thing, where if we call it a switch, but if I hit a button with whatever part of my body is reliable, so it could be your head, could be your hand, could be your thumb, could be an eye twitch, or even a breath, then I can learn cause and effect. I've now learned that I can have an effect on the environment and on the toy in front of me. So then we could take that skill and we can make it even bigger and teach more skills on top of that. So with the same movement, which again could be anything, I can now work the dinosaur. And so with him, we're going to have different games you can set up. So it's not just about making the dinosaur walk. That would get kind of boring after the first or second time. But can I stack blocks and now make it a game? Like, okay, let's see if we can make the dinosaur walk over and knock down the tower. Or with another child, some cooperative play. So you can have, you know, the dinosaur walk over and try to push a ball to their friend, where maybe the child can't use their arms to push the ball to their friend. Now they can do that, they can play. Okay, and then on the right, I don't know if you all saw this, this was a Super Bowl commercial. So this is now the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So the top shows a child using it. Does anybody play Xbox in here? Probably. One person, that's it. Okay. So it's the same kind of controller with the same buttons, but what's really nice about it is not only the large buttons and the ability to access it, but on the bottom picture you could see all those switches. So all of those buttons plug into the controller, and you could do the up, down, left, and right, or use the little joystick things in order to access the controller. So this is an example, but there's other things out there. So if you're somebody who has a hard time moving your arms at all, where this would be even difficult for you, there's controllers you could put in your mouth and use your tongue. So it wasn't a commercial, but they're out there. You can use a sip and puff controller. So there's ways to express leisure and fun and other things that are important other than just getting yourself dressed or exercising. And then one thing I don't have a slide about, but I wanted to mention, is the communication devices too. You know, as a child, as a baby, you start to babble. If there is a baby who has a trach or isn't strong enough to talk, then we want to be able to support that as well. So after you learn the cause and effect with the toys, you could take that skill and expand upon it and use communication devices, which at first you would use just simple switch, but then they get really cool. So you can either use, you know, switches in order to scan through and select, or there's eye gaze controllers where you use your eyes and you look at what it is that you want to say to somebody. You can get through whole sentences, and that's just activated on a dwell feature. So, and you could set the dwell custom-wise, but if you look at an object for, let's say your dwell is 3 seconds, then that's the word that comes up to say, and then scanning through it. So it's really exciting. I mean, not only with all the medical stuff going on, but all the technology too. Okay, so we talked a little bit about switches. I showed you some, but again, you can use any movement or almost a thought in order to activate your environment. So the first thing are the pressure activated switches, and those are the most common, and that I can show any of you online, but it's going to be a button where you actually have to depress something. Well, it takes a little bit of strength. After that, there's a toggle switch where if you hit it in any direction, it activates what you're trying to do. A joystick, which I'm sure if any of you are as old as I am and played Atari, you know what a joystick is. A mnemonic switch with either a sip and puff or a grip and puff that just pushes air through it. Mercury switch, which you can use, and as therapists, we're greedy. So sometimes we put a mercury switch on a child's head who's working on sitting. So as you come up, it activates the mercury switch, and then you can play. But we don't want to do anything at home for a leisure activity that's going to fatigue somebody. And then again, eye blink, twitch, and they even have EMG switches. Okay, back to upper extremities. So there's a lot of mobile arm supports. They're really cool too. The top picture is the Rex, which our sister hospital in Delaware actually helped to develop. And it's something that used to work on rubber bands and now has a mnemonic system. So you can get that anti-gravity shoulder and elbow movement with this attached to your arm and attached to your wheelchair. It's been difficult trying to get funding for mobile arm supports, so what we recommend to people is to call your insurance company and figure out who takes your insurance in order to pay for these. But there are a lot of different ones. You can either go horizontal with them, you can come up against gravity. You know, we have one in clinic. If anybody comes to see us, I can hook it to your wheelchair and you could try it out. One girl came in and she's like, all right, where's Dr. Finkel? I want to give him a high five now. So, it was neat. Okay. Reachers. So this is all about expanding your reachable space. So especially for type 2s who are now in a wheelchair, you know, what are you going to do when you drop your toy or you drop your toothbrush? So we have some examples. I have a lot of props, so bear with me. These are all reachers. So they make them in different lengths. They make them so you can use different amounts of grip. But the idea is that you're going to be able to reach something either on a counter, in the refrigerator, a toy that you drop on the floor, anything that you want to get to within your, that can just expand your ability. So with SMA, some of the difficulty has been, I think, in the shoulder strength and the grip strength. And there's a couple things to think about with them. So I don't have one, but there are reachers that lock. So when you're looking at shoulder strength and you want to get whatever you're picking up, oops, I won't do that. Okay. You want to lock it, and then you can kind of fish it up and bring it to your lap. But then if you're looking at hand strength, finding a trigger that you are strong enough to pull and to activate is great too. So there's 3 different kinds, and again, they come in different lengths depending on your height. The one thing I recommend is, although they have clips, they don't work so well in a wheelchair. So I always ask parents to get a little creative and create a holster like a cowboy that you could put your reacher in, because the last thing you want to do is drop your reacher, and then now what do? You can't pick it up. So that's what those are. Okay, so we're going to go through self-care things, starting with the most embarrassing one that kids don't like to talk to me about. So toileting. What can we do for toileting? Well, we want to make sure that you have adequate postural support. So there's 2 examples of something you can just add to your toilet. The first one goes over your toilet, gives you some handrails to help you sit up or sit down, or stand up or sit down better. Something with a little postural support. And then there's also wiping aids. Somebody who wants to live independently, you don't want to have to call an aid every time after you have a bowel movement. So I have one of those to show you. And they have all kinds of different ones. This one's kind of cool. So you push a button in the back, which is not a hard button to push. You'd wrap your toilet paper around, squeeze, and it just extends your reach. So now whichever way you want to use it, you may be able to wipe yourself independently. Something else to think about are bidets. I think you can add a bidet to your toilet seat at home. You can buy one at Home Depot and add it for around $20, and that can help with the cleaning as well. Girls with menstruation, it can be hard to manage. So a bidet could help. There's also a new thing called period underwear. So sometimes wearing that can help you to, if you're having struggles figuring out how to use your personal devices. So at school, this is another challenge we see with toileting. A lot of kids come in and they restrict what they're drinking and eating in the school environment because they don't want to take time out to go to the restroom. So you see a lot of people being dehydrated because they don't want to go to the nurse. They don't want to be transferred. And in some cases, they don't have a plan for what to do at school should they have to go. So what I try to tell everybody is, everybody has a potty emergency sometime, and you're going to have to go. So you need to talk to your school, have your parents talk to your school, and come up with a plan. What happens if you have to go? And then how do you keep your body healthy and keep yourself hydrated? Bathing. There's a couple of bath chair examples up there. So the first one on the bottom is a tub transfer bench, which is nice if you're somebody who has to transfer onto, or you have a tub or a shower it could work on, but you basically transfer onto it outside of the tub, and then you would fish your feet over the ledge and then scoot your bottom over. So it makes transferring a lot easier where you may or may not need the Hoyer lift. And it might increase your independence to be able to do it. The other one is more of a full body bath chair example. They also have some for little kids that help you sit down in the water. When you think about promoting play, almost every child that I know of loves to play in the tub. You could put, there's crayons now you can color on your bathroom wall. There's all kinds of bath toys. So how do you promote that for a child who has SMA if they're sitting above the water? So getting something where you can get down and do that water play too, I think is important. If you're working on bathing yourself and you're sitting in one of the chairs, how are you going to be able to reach your body? So these are examples, and I have one. But they get a lot nicer and fancier. But a long-handled sponge, just from a sitting position now, you can wash your back, you can reach down and wash your legs. The little yellow things you see, those are toe brushes. You can actually stick it between your toes to make sure your feet are clean. So that can help to make you a little bit more independent. If you're somebody who stands in the shower, you want to keep in mind that the bathroom, and especially a shower, is probably the most dangerous part in your house. So you're wet, you're surrounded by glass and tile. So if you fall, there is a chance you could get hurt. So if you like to stand, you know there's a possibility of having like at least the non-stick stickers on the bottom. I don't know if any of you watched The Big Bang Theory, but there was a whole episode about having the stickers on the bottom to make it non-stick and safe. Okay, and then grooming. Grooming also, I know there's a lot of adults in here affected by SMA as well, but you could have a long-handled razor. Something to think about in the bathroom to increase your independence is how can I get, if I'm in a wheelchair, can you adapt your bathroom? Is there somewhere that you could go underneath, like a vanity, so you can now have elbow support? Having elbow support for either self-feeding or grooming tasks can really increase your independence. Now you can reach your face, you can shave, you can put on makeup, you could brush your hair. And then there's examples up here of other things. There's a long-handled comb or brush to be able to brush your hair. The soap thing, I actually had a family a couple weeks ago who were like, you know, my child is in the bathroom, they could do absolutely everything, but boy, that shampoo bottle is a doozy. They can't squeeze it, they can't pick it up, they just don't have the strength. So this is an example of something that you can just mount in your shower, and then you put your hand under it, just probably like the soap dispenser here in the hotel, and it, you know, gives you shampoo. Well, you could put a couple in there, one for shampoo, one for conditioner, one for body soap. There. Now, just for something that's available just on the commercial market, you've increased your independence. Okay. Eating. Eating, I think, as a child or an adult is something you really want to do independently. So how can you maintain your ability to self-feed? So there's long-handled utensils, long-handled spoons and forks that could just increase your reach a little bit. These are other examples of things that are out there, especially after spine surgery. A lot of children seem to, at least temporarily, lose the ability to feed themselves because you used to be able to use strategies to bend over, and you don't have that anymore. So now how do you get your arm up a little bit higher? So step one would be to use a little bit of a higher table, again, to give yourself elbow support. So instead of coming up here, you're coming here, and you can feed yourself. And if that doesn't work, then there's other things out there. The white thing on the bottom is the OB self-feeder. I met with the people at a different conference that created that, and they told me that insurance will cover it. I haven't tried yet, but this is what they told me. And that's something that you push it, it's switch activated, so you would push a button, it would scoop your food and then bring it to your mouth. So then you're still self-feeding. The other is just a long straw that can hook to a wheelchair that you could drink independently. It has, and I have an example up here if anybody wants to see one, but a one-way valve. So some straw drinking and pulling the liquid up the straw all the way every time can be fatiguing. So these sorts of straws, and I have a little one that you could put in a normal drink, it keeps the liquid at the top, like if you were to put your finger on it, so it's always ready. So you only have to suck it up once. And then sleeping, and I want to take a moment to just talk about dressing. I apparently neglected a slide on that, but there is a lot of brand new adaptive clothing out there that makes it really exciting. So Zappos has a whole section on adaptive clothing where you can get multiple brands. So I have some examples I just want to show you, again, so you know they exist. But we have, and I'm very lucky, Dr. Finkel supported me to buy a Mary Poppins bag. So we have all these things to show everybody in person. Okay. So this is an example of an adaptive shirt. So it looks like a normal little dress shirt that a little boy would wear. But if you have trouble with buttons or fasteners, they're all magnets, all the way down. So it makes it really easy to put it on and then get the fasten it up, and nobody can tell. It looks like a typical shirt. Even these sleeve ones, which I don't think anybody could do on their own, they're all magnetic as well. So that's a shirt. Jeans, which are the hardest thing to put on by yourself, and especially the buttons, and with the style nowadays where girls want to wear all skinny jeans. But the same thing, they're magnetic. And then on the very top, it's a little piece of Velcro. If you're somebody who wears AFOs, the bottom is magnetic as well. So you could get the AFOs on and then fasten your pants around them so you don't have to try to pull them up and get them to fit a little bit better. This is an example of something that was on Shark Tank. So it's not made for people with disabilities. So which I think is kind of cool, that this is now universal designed for everybody, or for all children struggling with fasteners. So this is the myself belt. So a lot of school uniforms require you to wear a belt, or some children, like my son, they just like belts, but they're not very good at doing them. So I know I've gotten a phone call before of you need to come bring a change of clothes for your child, because as a mother I neglected to put an extra pair in his backpack because he couldn't get his belt undone on time. But this would enable that. So nobody could tell that it's an adapted belt. It hooks to one of your belt loops, and then it's just Velcro. So you can have the style, and they have lots of different fun designs as well, but just to make you more independent. Let's see. And then shoes. One little guy in here has the, where did he go? Aiden has some adaptive shoes on, so we can show you those. Those are the coolest. We don't have any examples of those, the Billy shoes. But we do have the Nike Fly Ease, which are these, and we have the Converse. So the Nike Fly Ease, if you haven't seen them, zip all the way around. So you could slide your foot with an AFO on. They have elastic laces on, so they have a little bit of a give. And then you just zip it back. So it's designed to increase independence with dressing. The Converse, if you like that style instead, they're a little bit more narrow, but they Velcro, so the whole back comes off. Like that. And then the Billy shoes, which Aiden's wearing, have the zipper around the front. So the idea is that it opens up the shoe a little easier for you to get your foot in, so you don't have to struggle with that. If you don't like any of those styles, you can add elastic laces to shoes you already like, so you don't have to tie them every time. What? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, come on. You want to show everybody your shoe? They're really cool.
There's a ramp around back if he wants to go up on stage.
You want to come up on stage with your shoes? No, you just want to give me a shoe. So these are the Billy shoes. And look how cool. They unzip completely. So you could put your foot in all the way on the top. And then independently, because there's a little thing here, you can even slide your finger in, and zip them all the way up. And then you never have to worry about tying them. And they're very stylish. Zappos, $55. We're going to buy one for the clinic. Kelly already has it in her cart. So you can So if you don't like any of those shoes and you're determined that you need to wear, I don't know, your Nike Air or something else really cool, you can add elastic shoelaces to whatever shoe you have to enable to pull on the tongue and get in it, or they have other things. So there's hickeys, which are little, I don't know, rubbery things you put across. These are Zubits, I like those, where you put them on your laces and it opens up the shoe all the way and then it's a magnet. And supposedly they're strong enough for runners if you watch their infomercial. Okay. I have a lot more, but if you have specific questions, let me know and I'll show you more of the things. Sleeping is something not to forget about. So it's very important. Everybody wants to get a good night's sleep. You want to be able to sleep in a bed that you can get out of. So these are examples. The top one is an adjustable bed. You know, you could get them as high as like the Sleep Number ones, which are really incredible. Costco sells several, and then hospital beds would do the same thing. Just having an adjustable bed to work on bed mobility. If you're somebody who needs extra support when you sleep, this is a sleep system. All of the pillows and cushions all around you. Something just to allow for comfort and positioning while you're asleep. Okay. Environmental control. So this has come a long way lately too. It's very exciting. Environmental control devices, 15 years ago used to cost thousands and thousands of dollars. But now I have two examples. So Alexa, does anybody have an Alexa or any of the other ones? Oh, one person. Okay. All right. Well, they're cool. You can hook up if you have one. You could buy special light bulbs and locks for your houses and, all the outlets. And then you could just tell Alexa, turn off the lights. So you don't have to do it anymore. Lock the door. So that's huge for environmental control. And then here's another example of a different company. It's an app that you download, and the same thing. You can have this device control all the things in your house. Okay, and then finally, independent living and transitioning to adulthood. So a lot of you are already adults, but for us, we end at 21, and there's everybody's going off to college, and they all want to drive, and you're like, now what? I want to be able to do all these things. So the first, meal prep in your kitchen. How can I make my kitchen more accessible? How can I live independently? So getting refrigerators you can open from either being in a wheelchair or reduced strength, they do exist. How can you organize your shelves and your pantry in order to be able to reach everything in there? Maybe you're somebody who doesn't have enough strength to lift a gallon of milk, but you could lift a half a gallon, so you just buy in smaller portions. Bathroom access, we talked a little bit about that already. Do I have ramps to get in and out of my house? Can I get out of wherever I live in my wheelchair, and then now it's time to drive? So maybe I need an adaptive van. So sometimes we can provide support on, okay, well, where can you go? What kind of skills do you need in order to drive? Now, we don't have a driving center, but some exist in Orlando. So do you need hand controls to drive? You don't have to drive the way, with a traditional gas pedal and brake pedal and the gears. You could drive with just complete hand controls. One hand, two hands, and now I think there's some cars that don't even have a steering wheel, right? Maybe. I thought I saw a commercial for one once. And then college and university access. So now you're talking about going to vocational rehab. We have a lot of kids who are turning 18 saying, okay, I want to live in a dorm. I want to live away from my mom and dad. And sometimes the parents are in the background shaking their heads like, no. And I'm like, well, let's see. Let's see if we can make that happen. What support do you really need? Entering the workforce, it's just to know what's out there and what supports you can get. And legally through, the ADA, what is your employer required to do to allow for access? Another cool thing to think about, at the same conference that they were doing all the environmental control, the CIA was there. And they are actually actively recruiting people with disabilities to join the CIA. I thought that was neat. Okay, and then sexuality and adult relationships. So are there ways that you could adapt to that? Any questions?
Questions? All right, guys. Thanks, Julie.